Hello and welcome in. Thank you for visiting Heaven Sent Tarot. So today I want to begin the reading right away, and I first want to talk about some of the energies that I've been feeling since my last reading. So it wasn't the last reading, it was actually maybe the reading before the last reading, but I'm not quite sure what the title of it is. However, in that reading, I said a little bit about racism and white supremacy, and a little bit about the experience of being on the receiving end of that system, that culture, that behavior, that mode of treatment, etc., so forth and so on, right? So, I wanted to talk a little bit about why it is that I chose to bring up that discussion. And the reason is because I recently saw a story occurred in Colorado, I believe it was. And the story is that a black man has been experiencing what amounts to terrorism, really, extreme violence on the property that he owns there, and has been reduced to a situation in which he has to reach out to the online community because the local area in which he lives, the police aren't doing anything about the situation. And I mentioned this very scenario in my most recent reading, or that last reading, I'm sorry, not the most recent, but that reading that I'm referring to. I actually mentioned this exact scenario in which the way racism and white supremacy functions in our lives is that there is no legal recourse for these kinds of situations, right? And so you're left with a man in this situation who's older and cannot protect himself in the way that one would normally expect to protect their home or their family or their land or whatever the case may be, right? So I've been commiserating on this energy a lot recently. It seems to be coming up for me a lot again lately. So I'm thinking that this energy will be relevant to the cards that I pulled today. So we'll see how the reading goes today. And as I've stated before, I'm finding my rhythm as I'm working with my channel, and I seem to really like these 3 card pulls, so I believe that's what I'll be doing today. But I am considering doing longer reads, so today will be a fairly brief one. So let's see what the cards have to tell us today. First card out, we have the deer and the oat, healing. That's a beautiful card. Okay, I'm going to pull all 3 before I begin the read. Oh, look at there, 2 cards came out, so let's see what they are together. Oh wow, everything is in reverse today. So we have here the turtle and the coriander, satisfaction, interesting. And then it looks here, the skunk and the magnolia, protection. Now, as I was just discussing before, my mind has really been on racism, white supremacy lately, and with that energy in mind, these cards are really giving me, as I've hinted at or I've kind of referred to, the purpose of my readings are about decolonization. And decolonization has to do with the destruction and the genocide and all of the horrible things that come along with racism and white supremacy. I feel that a lot of people don't really put those two things together, but the reality of the situation is that they are one and the same thing for those of us who are indigenous and have been experiencing this kind of reality for these many generations. And so, what I'm seeing here in this energy, as we've talked about, this parasitic colonizing force, this colonial energy, and the beings that come along with it, those who consider themselves to be a part of that culture, the people who live and work and operate and function inside of white supremacy. I said in that video that this will be ending in my lifetime, and I do believe that we are seeing the end of this reality in real time today, right now, as so many things are happening, as so many things are converging and escalating. We see what many are saying is the fall of the Western Empire, the fall of the United States Empire, and so forth and so on. And so with these cards here, what we have is everything in reverse. And I'll say again, from beginning to end, we have healing, satisfaction, and protection, all in reverse, right? And so let's look at that from a indigenous decolonial lens. So you have here a group, a culture of people who have spent hundreds of years, or however long it's been, we really can't say for certain because they've destroyed any understanding that we have of the timeline. But let's say that 500 years or more or so, 500 to 600 years now is accurate. So if colonization has been going on for about 500 years, that means that these people have been very comfortable and have been able to basically get away with this very terrible thing without any kind of accountability, without any consequences happening to them. So I said before that this scenario entails that these people get away with doing these very awful, dangerous, what amounts to terrorist activity. And this is a daily existence that goes really unnoticed, uncared about. Most people who are not melanated, who are not black or indigenous or non-white, do not understand the depth of terror and the depth of struggle and pain and just the daily fight to survive, right? So all that said, let's look at what the cards are telling us is happening to this energy. So it seems to me that those hundreds and hundreds of years of what seemed to be safety and security for this group of people is over with. let's go in order here, and I'll go from left to right and read what I believe is happening in order here. So first, we have the deer and the oat healing. Now, the oat is a wonderful healing plant, and what the oat does is actually it has the ability to repair the cells in your skin, if I'm not mistaken. I might be a little bit off about that, but in general, the oat is known to be able to heal the skin. It heals the stomach. It has the ability to soothe, right? So it's a very soothing plant. And so this healing energy being in the reverse here is telling me that the soothing state that these people were able to live in, because let's recall for a moment that slavery entailed, coddling these people, being there waiting on them hand and foot, in many cases having to be the shoulder that they cried on, having to be the listening ear, having to be the counselor. And this remains true to this day. And so this healing, this soothing, this comfort, those days are over. And you see here the satisfaction and the protection. All of that is getting ready to disappear before these people's very eyes. And I want to also show here, there's a very curious energy here about this protection card, because it's showing us the skunk and the magnolia. And these are actually, I'm not going to say two opposing energies, but I actually find it kind of funny, because the magnolia, if you've never smelled a magnolia is a very gorgeous smelling plant. It's a beautiful tree. When it blooms in the summertime, the flowers are absolutely luscious. They're very large and they smell divine. And so you have here a skunk, which is, known to not smell very good, but you have this skunk, this animal that it doesn't smell good, but it only does that when it's trying to protect itself, right? So you have this energy here of what you might say are two opposing forces. This skunk that most people think is disgusting because it has this spray that doesn't smell very good, right? But the thing about a skunk is they're actually very sweet, very kind animals. They are actually kind of like puppies. They can be trained, they can be tamed, and they can actually be made to not smell bad. The glands can be removed, or if you choose to go a natural route, there are ways to make them so that they don't spray so often, because it really is just a defense mechanism. So let's put that again into the lens of racism and white supremacy, right? Because let's think about what this whole ideal is really based on. It's based on the idea that a group of people, black people specifically, or a group of people called black people specifically, are a monstrous, inhuman, threatening, scary, savage group of human beings that need to be avoided at all costs. They are to be looked upon as a peasant working class scum that is not worth anybody's time or attention or energies or anything like that, right? So a whole system has been built on this concept, when the reality is, if you really look at the community of people that these people are demonizing, they are in fact the sweetest, kindest, cleanest, godliest, very spiritual, very religious, uh, all these outstanding qualities that can be said about the group of people experiencing racism, right? So look at that energy there. For all this time, this protection was being granted to this group of people. They were able to practice their racism and white supremacy on a group of innocent people who really, for the most part, never did lash out at them in a way that you might expect them to. Yes, there has been lashing out. Yes, there has been violence. Yes, all these things are attendant with the situation and the circumstances that this group of people, black people, find themselves in. You're going to find these people defending themselves. So, yes, sometimes the stereotypes may apply to that group of people. Yes, they may do things that are out of character, or no, out of character is actually wrong. You're going to see defense mechanisms that make these people look bad when in reality they're not actually bad at all. And the same goes for the skunk. The skunk in and of itself is actually not a bad animal, but the stench causes people to basically judge it badly or to think of it as a bad creature when it's really not. And so the protection, those days are over, right? Because the group of people, black people, experiencing this situation are finally fed up energetically with this situation. And the same is true for many groups of people around the world who are experiencing this white supremacy racism. Everybody is fed up with this situation. And so the protection that we have granted these people energetically, we are now removing that energetic protection. So this may or may not look like anything in the physical realm, right? This doesn't necessarily mean that you'll see people out on the streets suddenly fighting more often or anything like that. But you will start to notice perhaps a shift in the energies. If you are here in this channel, then I imagine that you are a little more aware of the realities going on around you. So I imagine that you're aware of the changes in the energies, especially within the Afro-Indigenous Black communities in the United States and likely all over the world, right? We have removed our spiritual protection from this white supremacist delusion that has not only destroyed our lives, because it has controlled our lives all the way up until this very day. And there is no satisfaction in that life for us. There is no healing in that life for us. As I talked about in the beginning of this video, this man is experiencing right now and has been since he bought the property. So for 5 or 6 years has been experiencing horrific situations going on his property and cannot stand up for himself, protect himself like a man would, because in this reality, standing up for ourselves means generally we are going to sacrifice our lives, the lives of our loved ones, maybe go to jail, maybe lose our lives, some unfortunate thing may happen, all because we wanted to protect ourselves, right? And so we never really live any kind of life of satisfaction. There is no healing of this wound that this racist lifestyle, you might call it, has inflicted upon us. And so we live in this daily wound that is never healing. In fact, it's festering, right? Or has been festering. But now, again, I like to point out the colors of my cards because the colors here are these very lovely pastel, pale, neutral earth tones. And I'm very drawn to this color palette in general just for myself. I really like wearing these kinds of colors. I like having these colors around me. And these colors are very healing, right? They're very calm to the eye. They feel very gentle. And so, as a whole, I feel that the indigenous community, the black community, the communities all over the world that have experienced colonization, also known as white supremacy and racism, we are now doing our own spiritual healing, right? We are finding a way to no longer exist in a reality that has really been created as a constant damaging force against us, the environment, all of these things. All of these things are damaged because of this thing. It's not just personal, it's environmental, right? So when I talk about decolonization, I'm talking about healing the environment. And healing the environment is an energetic process that can be done on a personal micro level. So each of us has the ability to do our own healing work. And as a community, we have the ability to do our own healing work. And so that is what these cards are telling us here. That as a global community, and also as the very uniquely positioned black community in the United States, and also throughout the Americas, this includes the Caribbean, South America, and so forth. As these communities are healing themselves, we are turning away from these damaging and negative stereotypes that have been put upon us. We are not this evil creature, this evil being that white supremacy has said we are. We are, in fact, these very gentle creatures. Look at all these creatures in these cards here. All of these creatures are very gentle, but all of these creatures also have a defense mechanism. Each of them has some way of defending themselves, right? And these creatures tend to be prized for that reason. A lot of these creatures tend to be hunted for that reason. And so these gentle creatures are always the prey in these scenarios, right? And so it's very ironic that the black community, having been demonized for so long, is in fact this very gentle energy that just happens to have a defense mechanism. And our defense mechanism is going to look very peaceful and very gentle. And I do believe that is going to be very shocking for a lot of people who bought the narrative of white supremacy and racism. And a lot of people have bought that narrative without really realizing that they did so. And so they have this expectation that the black community in the United States is going to be doing a certain thing at this time. I know right now that there has been a lot of talk trending online about the black community not participating in many of these protests that have been going on recently due to the Trump administration, ICE raids, and all these kinds of things going on. And I believe that this is shocking and surprising the larger American collective community who does not understand that energetically the black community has always been a very peaceful, people, right? And so our healing and our um, our participation does not necessarily look like being out on the forefront aggressively doing things. No, we are taking our time. We are being a little more quiet, more like deer in the forest, you know. Um, you'll see larger groups of deer, but they're doing their own thing in their own communities, and it's very difficult to find them at certain times, right? And the same goes for all of these creatures, actually. These creatures tend to be communal in nature. They do have their communities, but you won't really find them without doing a lot of work going around in the woods or around a riverbank or whatever the case may be to find them. And that is very much what the Black community and other indigenous communities are doing. Finding peace in our own communities and finding peace in our insular communities, whatever that looks like for us. While on the other side of that, the white supremacist community, and that does not only mean white people here, okay? I want to be very clear that white supremacy has infiltrated and infected all people. And even though the white group of people is largely responsible for that, it is true that all people, Black communities, communities of different ethnicities all over the world, are also infected by this. And so, with all of these things being in reverse, those who are infected by this horrific, traumatic virus are going to be experiencing a loss of satisfaction, a loss of health, a loss of protection, right? And I've talked about this before, so I won't spend too much more time on it because, you know, this energy is coming up again, and it's coming up again in a different format. So I want to, you know, point out what is different about this energy, but also what is the same about this energy that has been coming up in my other readings. So, what's different here is that it's talking about the satisfaction and the healing here being very prominent, and the protection too, but I'm focused a lot on this healing, right? Because we have to think of white supremacy and the culture of white supremacy, racism, colonization as a whole. Those in the indigenous communities who are healers, it's already been known, it's already been said, it's already been prophesied that this is a sickness, this is an illness. And now that we've come to the escalation, the head, right, the final point of what this system can possibly be, because it appears that it can't really get too much worse than this. If it does get worse than this, I can't imagine what that would look like, right? Maybe I will discuss that more in another read, actually. But it appears that there can't really be much more damage done than this. So all of these people have lived under the illusion that they have led healthy lifestyles, that they've been satisfied, that they've been safe and protected in their lives and things like that. And all of that is definitely coming to a very stark conclusion for these people. And the illusion that they have been healthy, the health here, I believe I talked a little bit about COVID and the virus. I feel that there is going to be maybe a rerun of that, maybe something similar here coming up soon, maybe something to do with the escalating war situations. But whatever it is, let's be paying attention to the possibility of another prominent virus of some sort here. And again, with the loss of satisfaction, I believe we already see that playing out in the reality with the inflating prices and things just in general being more difficult, right? People aren't feeling safe anymore, right? With that protection being in the reverse. So things are looking very interesting out there in the reality. And as I've stated in my other readings, we're being vigilant, we're paying attention, but we're not being overly invested in all the possible outcomes of all those things, right? Because those things are not for us. In these communities that we're creating that are safe and protected and healthy, right? We're creating satisfaction. I will end the reading on this note. I have been so just satisfied and content with creating the content that I want to create, creating the kind of energy that I want in my home, and just being a homebody, right? Just really taking care of my space. And so we will continue doing that. Let's move forward with the energy of this deer here. Very princely energy there, protecting his forest, protecting his women and children at this time. Same goes for all the other creatures here in this springtime. I'm feeling this very masculine energy in the spring. A lot of people tend to think of feminine energy, but I'm also thinking we need to consider the masculine energy here that protects the woman and the female as she's bringing new life into the world, and he's protecting his new infant children as well, right? So that's very important energy to remember in this new springtime energy here. And so with that being said, I will see you all in my next reading. Thank you and bye.